A young boy sits silently, gazing out the plane window, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing the junior pilot wings pinned to his jacket. His eyes reflect a blend of excitement and wonder, yet there's a subtle heaviness to his gaze, an unspoken uncertainty that even he can't fully articulate. Today, 9-year-old Marcus embarks on his first solo flight, carrying not only the thrill of adventure but also the weight of his father's aviation legacy. What the passengers around him don't know, though, is that Marcus is the son of Captain Jordan Williams, the very pilot at the helm of the plane. But to the flight attendants, Marcus is just another unaccompanied minor, and to one in particular, Claire Mitchell, he's a nuisance. His small, polite gestures are met with sharp words and cold glares. Claire doesn't know who Marcus truly is, but when the truth comes out, it will be too late to undo the hurt she's caused. This story is not just about flying. It's about the judgments we make, often in the blink of an eye, and how even the smallest gestures of kindness or cruelty can leave lasting marks. Stay with us as we dive into the story of Marcus, the boy who boarded a plane as a stranger but will disembark as someone unforgettable. In his room that morning, Marcus was surrounded by model airplanes, each carefully placed, as though poised for takeoff. His walls were a shrine to his love of aviation, posters of vintage prop planes, sleek modern jets, and every aircraft imaginable. To Marcus, these weren't just models and pictures. They were windows into the world he adored. But today was not just any day. Today, Marcus would fly alone for the first time, headed to see his aunt. What made this day even more special was that his father, Captain Jordan Williams, would be piloting the very plane. Marcus clutched his favorite model plane, a miniature replica of his father's aircraft, turning it over in his hands. After checking for any loose parts, he wrapped it in a soft cloth and tucked it carefully into his backpack. "You're coming with me," he whispered to the plane, a grin spreading across his face. The sound of footsteps pulled Marcus' attention toward the door. His face lit up as he saw his father, Captain Williams, standing in the doorway, already dressed for the flight. His uniform gleamed with golden stripes, and he looked every bit the hero Marcus had always imagined. "Almost ready for takeoff, co-pilot?" Captain Williams asked, his voice carrying a mix of warmth and authority. Marcus stood at attention, mimicking his father's stance. "Yes, sir, just packing my lucky plane." Captain Williams crossed the room, kneeling beside Marcus. He adjusted the small wings pinned to Marcus's jacket. "Big day, buddy, your first solo flight," he said, his voice soft with a hint of nostalgia. "I'm proud of you." Marcus's chest swelled with pride. "Thanks, Dad, I won't let you down." Captain Williams placed a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder, his tone turning serious. "Remember, no matter what happens, you keep your head up, all right? You're part of this team, just like me." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, his voice steady. With one last look around his room, Marcus grabbed his backpack and followed his father out to the car. The drive to the airport was filled with Marcus's endless questions about flying. "Dad, what's it like up there in the clouds?" Marcus asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. Captain Williams chuckled. "It's like the world is at your feet. The ground looks small, and you realize just how big the sky really is. You're going to love it, son." As they approached the airport, Marcus's excitement grew. The bustling terminals, the planes parked outside, everything felt like a part of the world he cherished. He walked through the crowded terminal, Captain Williams's hand resting protectively on his shoulder, feeling a surge of pride as people nodded in acknowledgement of the captain's uniform. At the security checkpoint, Captain Williams knelt down to Marcus's level. "This is where I say goodbye for now," he said gently. "Remember everything we talked about. Stay in your seat, follow the attendant's instructions, and keep your seatbelt on." Marcus nodded eagerly. Yes, sir, I'll stay out of trouble. Captain Williams smiled, his pride evident. And remember, you're not alone on this flight. You're part of a team. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. With a final hug, Captain Williams handed Marcus his boarding pass. I'll see you on the other side, son. Marcus watched as his father disappeared down a separate hallway, tall and confident. With a deep breath, he turned and walked toward the gate, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and nerves. At the gate, Marcus stood on his tiptoes to hand over his boarding pass to Claire Mitchell, the senior flight attendant. She barely glanced up as she took the pass, her expression indifferent. Unaccompanied minor? Claire asked, her tone brisk. Yes, ma'am, Marcus replied politely. I'm going to see my aunt. My dad made sure everything was ready. Claire didn't respond. Her eyes remained fixed on her computer screen as her fingers moved quickly across the keys. Stand still, please, she said curtly, handing him a small tag for his backpack. Marcus felt a pang of unease. He wanted to say something, but her cold demeanor made him hesitant. He silently attached the tag to his bag and waited. When the boarding call came, Marcus joined the line, clutching his backpack tightly. His excitement simmered beneath his nerves as he approached the plane, reminding himself of his father's words. Keep your head up. Inside the cabin, Marcus walked down the aisle, hoping for a friendly greeting, but Claire was already ahead, ushering him to his seat with a quick, impersonal gesture. When he reached his assigned seat by the window, his excitement dimmed, but he took a deep breath, feeling comforted by the view from the sky he would soon experience. However, as Marcus fastened his seatbelt, Claire approached again, her eyes scanning his seat number. Unaccompanied minors sit in the back, she said flatly, pointing toward a seat near the lavatory. Policy. Marcus's heart sank. His father had chosen the window seat for him, knowing how much he loved watching the wings during takeoff. But not wanting to make a scene, Marcus nodded, gathered his things, and followed Claire to the back of the plane. The new seat was cramped, wedged against the bathroom wall, and his view was blocked by the plane's wing. The constant sound of the lavatory door opening and closing added to the discomfort. His excitement faded, but he reminded himself of his father's advice. Keep your head up. Just then, an elderly man with silver hair noticed Marcus sitting alone. His eyes softened, and he leaned over, offering a warm smile. Quite the little traveler, aren't you? He said kindly. Marcus looked up, managing a small smile. Yes, sir. My dad is the pilot on this flight. The man nodded, his smile widening. You must be very proud. Not everyone gets to fly with family. Marcus felt his spirits lift, a small but welcome glimmer of hope in an otherwise lonely situation. The flight continued, and Claire moved down the aisle serving snacks. When she reached Marcus's row, her expression stiffened again. Would you like a drink? She asked, her voice as impersonal as before. Yes, please. May I have apple juice? Marcus asked politely. Claire placed the cup down with a slight thud, causing some of the juice to spill over the sides. Marcus's smile faded, but he thanked her nonetheless, trying not to let her coldness dampen his mood. An elderly woman sitting across the aisle watched the interaction, her eyebrows furrowing in disapproval. But Claire moved on, oblivious. Marcus, trying to distract himself, took out his sketchbook and began drawing airplanes. Drawing was something he shared with his dad, a reminder of their time spent together. Minutes later, Claire approached again. When she saw Marcus's sketchbook, her expression turned cold. This isn't art class, young man, she snapped. Don't make a mess. Marcus flushed with embarrassment, his fingers trembling as he closed the sketchbook. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he murmured. Nearby, passengers exchanged glances, silently disapproving of Claire's treatment of Marcus. As the flight went on, Marcus felt the weight of isolation, the distance between him and the rest of the passengers growing. His father, somewhere far ahead in the cockpit, remained unaware of the challenges his son was facing in the back. But through it all, Marcus held on to one thought. Keep your head up. Marcus at every turn. They had all seen the way Claire's attitude toward him shifted the moment she'd realized who he was, and the more they observed, the more their shared concern grew. As the meal service began, Marcus's small sketchbook lay open in his lap, his pencil dancing across the page, capturing the essence of the airplane's wing. The sketch was becoming a quiet expression of the dream he held tightly in his heart, a dream of flight, of following in his father's footsteps, and of one day soaring through the skies with the same grace his father did. Marcus felt the weight of his backpack, but in it, he also carried a sense of purpose, a future he could almost see, the wings of a pilot that one day would carry him above the clouds. Even in the face of frustration, even as he felt invisible and misunderstood by some, there was still a deep sense of hope that refused to let him fall. Sarah passed by again, this time with her eyes landing on Marcus's sketchbook. Her warm smile reached him, and she paused beside his seat. "That's a great sketch you've got there, young man. You've got real talent." Her voice was light but sincere, like a small oasis of encouragement amidst the tension in the cabin. "Thanks, ma'am," Marcus said, his voice quieter but his smile growing. "You know," Sarah continued, "it's clear you've got a great future ahead of you, both in the skies and on the ground." She gave him another reassuring pat on the shoulder before continuing down the aisle. As Sarah moved away, the quiet buzz of conversation among the passengers picked up again. The group that had been quietly exchanging glances now seemed to feel a collective, quiet resolve. They had all noticed Sarah's kindness, her simple acknowledgement of Marcus's spirit, and they had seen the contrast with Claire's dismissive attitude. Soon, the meal service was complete, and the cabin was bathed in the soft glow of the reading lights as passengers settled back in. The murmurs of conversation among the group who had been observing began to form a subtle, unspoken agreement. They would not let this go unnoticed. In their own ways, they would stand up for Marcus. At one point, the elderly woman who Marcus had helped earlier turned to the businessman who had expressed his own indignation. "I think we should do something," she said, her voice resolute but kind. "It's not just about the boy. It's about treating everyone with respect." "I agree," the businessman replied. "Something has to be done." The young mother with the toddler, who had also been quietly watching, leaned in toward her husband. "This can't go on. If she's treating a child this way, who knows how she treats others?" The businessman nodded in agreement, a firm set to his jaw. "We're not just sitting by, we're standing with him." The murmurs continued to spread throughout the cabin. What had started as individual disapproval was now growing into a quiet but solidified unity. And though Marcus remained unaware of it, he could feel something shifting, something quietly strengthening around him. It was a silent support that wrapped around him like an invisible cloak, letting him know he wasn't as alone as he had felt earlier. The flight continued, the hum of the engines a comforting presence in the background as Marcus kept sketching. His model plane sat next to him, a small but significant reminder of his father, of his dreams, and of his place in the world. The right people had noticed him, and though he couldn't see the solidarity that had quietly taken root, he felt the warmth of it in his heart, even as he continued to sketch the sleek wings of the plane he was on, wings that, one day, would carry him into the sky. As the plane began its descent, the group of passengers who had quietly united in their support of Marcus prepared for what would come after landing. They would stand together, ensuring that his voice, his kindness, and his right to be treated with dignity would not go unheard. And Marcus, sitting in his small seat by the lavatory, would know that, in the end, the kindness he showed to others would be the thing that echoed the loudest. At every turn, Marcus felt the weight of the moment until a young mother with her toddler spoke up, determined. "This is enough. I'm going to say something if she keeps this up." Her husband agreed, noting how Marcus had done nothing wrong and was being treated unfairly. As CLA, the flight attendant, passed through the aisle with the meal cart, her demeanor was polite until she reached Marcus. She offered him a drink coldly, and after Marcus politely requested apple juice, she placed it roughly on his tray. Mr. Lewis, an elderly passenger, finally spoke up. "Excuse me, Miss Mitchell, but I've noticed how you've treated that young boy. He's done nothing wrong." CLA dismissed him, citing airline policy for unaccompanied minors. Other passengers, including the mother and a businessman, voiced their disapproval, expressing that Marcus was being unfairly singled out. Sarah Thompson, the co-pilot, approached and, sensing the tension, asked CLA to step aside. In private, Sarah gently confronted CLA, pointing out that her actions crossed a line. CLA, defensive at first, admitted that it had been a difficult month but recognized the need for kindness. After reflecting on Sarah's words and the passengers' reactions, CLA returned to Marcus and, with humility, apologized for her earlier behavior. Marcus accepted, and the atmosphere shifted, filled with a renewed sense of respect and understanding. The cabin, once tense, now carried a feeling of unity. Marcus's strength and the willingness to make amends reminded everyone of the power of kindness.